Yeah, we know you got a lot of questions. So let's figure this out right now on Fantasy Football Today Express. Whoa, do we have a lot of injuries and things that are up in the air right now as we sit here at 7:50 a.m. on Sunday, October 19th, getting you ready for Fantasy Week 7. All right, let's talk about the weather before we talk about the injuries, because it's going to be a little ugly in Cleveland. We're from Miami and Cleveland, in Chicago for the Saints and the Bears. And that's probably all we're really worried about right now. But how concerned are we about the weather as we sit here this morning?
Start with our disclaimer, as we always do, that I trust Kevin Roth from Roto Grinders. Go follow him on Twitter. He gives great updates. The update that I read this morning is that, first off, like the 50-mile-an-hour wind stuff you see in Cleveland is not probably reality during the game. It's not good. He's got it graded as an orange. I've downgraded it a little bit in terms of passing volume for both teams. Probably the bigger change in terms of my projections is the over-under from this game, which was 38.5 earlier in the week, is down to 35.5.
Wow.
So I think maybe the lowest of the year. We also had our highest earlier in the week. I'm still starting Devon Achane. I'm still starting Quinshon Judkins, of course. I'm still starting Jalen Waddle. I'm still starting Harold Fannin. I'm a little less excited about Jerry Jeudy, and I wasn't that excited about him in the first place. And I'm downright scared of Darren Waller.
Why scared of Waller and not Fannin?
Because Waller, as you mentioned earlier in the week, has the highest ADOT at the tight end position and doesn't do much after the catch. And Harold Fannin leads all tight ends in yards after the catch, or yards after contact. And one of them is being tackled by Browns and one of them is being tackled by Dolphins.
All right. And the Saints Bears, did you downgrade anyone in that game?
A smaller downgrade. It does not. Both these games could have a little bit of rain too, but that doesn't sound like it's a huge concern. The gusts not quite as bad in Chicago, but it is a little bit of a downgrade for that game. I'm still starting most everyone I was starting. DJ Moore coming back makes Luther Burden not appealing as any sort of a flex, and I don't really want to start DJ Moore either. I think Chris Olave's ADOT again is so low that the wind may not affect very many of the throws that he sees. It might be the biggest downgrade there would be Rashid Shaheed, because you kind of need that one big play from him, and I don't know that you're going to get those.
All right. So, we tried to do this on the mailbag on Friday, but now we have updated information. So, So Garrett Wilson's out, Puka Nacua is out. We were expecting that all week, but both Commanders wide receivers being out is a surprise. Pearsall out, not a big surprise. And then Evans and Ibuka are playing Monday, and they're both game time decisions. The fact that Ibuka is a game time decision is also a surprise. It seems like the reporting suggests that Evans is much more likely to play than Ibuka. So first of all, with your rankings, how many Bucs receivers are you ranking? Well, those two. Sorry,
we're ranking Mike Evans. We're not ranking Ibuka. I think the nice thing about both those guys is if you can manage it, it's not hard to roster one of the other Bucs wide receivers. Sterling Shepard would be my favorite. Tez Johnson would be the next best option. If you can get one of those guys on your bench, I'd be more likely to wait it out with Mike Evans. In fact, he's a top 24 wide receiver, and we're starting him. So that with Ibuka, we really think that it's just a positive sign that he was able to get a practice in, and it makes you feel better about him playing in their next game, but we're not anticipating him playing.
All right. So then who are the replacement wide receivers that you like this week? Be it in Washington or Tampa Bay or early game with the Rams, or Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to play. So that kind of takes the shine off of the situation there, but you're desperate for a wide receiver. You're looking at your waiver wire. Who are the guys that you're gravitating toward?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you qualified it some more, because like is not necessarily how I would describe it. But I still found last night on a waiver wire Trey Tucker. So if he happens to be out there, that would be the guy that I would want in terms of a fill-in wide receiver this week. After that, you make the choice between Alec Iomanner and Van Jefferson, who played the Calvin Ridley role without Calvin Ridley last week. I lean slightly toward Io Manor. Sterling Shepard, who I already mentioned. I think, assuming Ibuka's out, if it's Mike Evans and Sterling Shepard's still a top 40 wide receiver for me. He had a decent role before Evans got hurt. Jordan Whittington filling in for Puka Nacua would be next on the list. And then after that, it's probably Luke McCaffrey. Now, again, that Washington situation, they've got 3 guys, and a lot of people are getting excited that Jalen Lane could fill the Debo role. I slightly prefer Luke McCaffrey, but Lane's another name. And then Josh Reynolds is going to be the number 1 wide receiver for the Jets.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. And Chris Moore is another guy, that because when Debo was playing and McLaurin was out, McCaffrey was barely playing. He would make one big play a game, get pretty lucky kind of, but Chris Moore was on the field a lot, but he would pretty much never get targeted until last week. So it's a bit of a mess. And hopefully you don't have to start these guys. I actually like Tutu Atwell. I don't even know if you said him, but I think he's my favorite.
He's kind of got a little, like, he plays more, but he's got a little bit of a Luke McCaffrey. Like, it's probably going to take a big play for those guys to pay off. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Whittington gets more targets.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break and we'll talk about the running backs and the quarterbacks. And I got a good question. We got a question for you when we come back on FFT Express. All right. So what about Jaden Daniels? Is he a start still?
He is still a top 12 quarterback for me, but he was a top 3 quarterback at the beginning of the week. He is now QB 10 for me. But there's nobody available on the waiver wire you're going to find and start over
him. What about George Kittle?
Start him.
Okay. Running back. So how'd you end up ranking the Panthers running backs at the Jets?
I've left Rico Dowdle as an RB2. I have Chuba Hubbard as more of a flex in the he's just behind Tony Pollard, who I talked earlier in the week about not really liking. Again, this is another mystery box. But just from the way they've talked, I think Dowdle's going to see I think it'll probably be a hot hand approach, but as hot as Dowdle's been, I think you stay with him.
All right, I hope we get an update on Josh Jacobs. Right now, he's a game time decision with an illness, and also he has a calf issue. And it's funny because he was ill last week and he played great. And even said, he said, I knew when I was sick before the game that I was going to have a big game because the last time I was sick, I had a big game. But Emmanuel Wilson is 18% rostered. So this is a 4:00 game, 4:25, I think.
Go get him.
Yeah, get him. And where would you rank him if Jacobs were out? And unfortunately, you might have to just kind of replace him with a late game guy or a Monday guy, or you replace a late game guy with him because you might not be able to risk it for the 1:00s. But what would you do with Wilson if he were starting?
If Emmanuel Wilson were starting, I think we'd get a committee approach with him and Chris Brooks, and I would have Wilson ranked higher, but not inside the top 20 running backs, probably somewhere between 21 and 27. And I would probably lean more towards caution with that situation. In other words, just wanting to play. If I have an RB2, I'd rather just play that guy.
Okay. And DeAndre Swift, questionable.
He is. The reports we got this morning was they expect him to play. So he is a mid RB2.
Hassan Haskins is questionable, and Jacoby Brissett is likely to start for the Cardinals. Carson Wentz is going to start for the Eagles. Let's get some questions here. Rashee Rice or Rico Dowdle?
At this, in full PPR, would now be Rice.
In any format, would it be Dowdle? Because I think I just go Rice. I'm kind of optimistic about Rico Dowdle, but I'd say non-PPR, I'd go Dowdle.
Non-PPR, I would definitely go Dowdle.
Yeah, other than that, I'd go Rice. Zonovan Knight or Emmanuel Wilson? Yeah, that would be an easy Emmanuel Wilson for me.
I would go Emmanuel Wilson. It wouldn't be quite as easy, but yes.
Jaden Daniels or Drake May?
I would go May now.
With the wind here being a factor maybe for Waddle, would you go Waddle, Swift, or Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt?
I currently have Waddle still ahead in full PPR. Nope, I've got Bill over him in all formats. Bill.
Zach Ertz has to be a riser. So would you sit Kittle, Ertz, or Keenan Allen?
I would. This is another one where it's a bit of a guessing game because Ladd McConkey was such a clear third in this wide receiver room when Quentin Johnston was healthy. I would sit Ertz still.
Okay. Let's see. Quentin Johnston or Cortland Sutton? And where do you rank Harold Fannin?
I would put Quentin Johnston ahead of Cortland Sutton, but they are very, very close, and it's probably a little safer to play Sutton since he's not coming off the injury. But if you're shooting for the upside, it would be Quentin Johnston for me. Harold Fannin is tight end 6.
Chris Moore or Jordan Whittington?
I would go Whittington.
Tez Johnson or Kendrick Bourne?
Definitely Bourne.
Rico or Scadaboo?
I would go Rico.
Really? Okay. And Chigo Okonkwo, who could step up and, get his 6 targets, or Tutu Atwell?
I would go Chig.
All right. So you know the deal. We'll see you at 29 minutes from now, 8:30, where the Jaguars inactives are just coming in now. 8:30. Let me see. Before I sign off, there's a breaking news tweet. Let me just make sure we don't miss anything. Hold on. DeAndre Swift expected to play. Jalen Carter expected to play. And as of now, Josh Jacobs is a true game time decision, or, just before game time. And Stephon Diggs is expected to play. I did not mention him. All right, 8:30 a.m. We'll see you. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody. Talk to you soon.